Hey friend, today I'm going to be showing you how I made this floral pillow for my outdoor chair. It's fairly simple, so the first thing I did was find a fabric that I liked and I cut it 22 inches by 20 inches. And you will need two of these. So technically you will cut 44 inches by 20 inches or two pieces of 22 by 20 inches. I purchased my fabric in a 2-yard cut, so I just cut one big piece of 44 inches by 20 inches. And I want my pillows to be really soft, so I grabbed a pack of this quilting fabric to put on the back side of my floral fabric. And then I cut the quilting fabric to the same size as the floral fabric. And I have two because I am making two pillows. And lastly, I clipped my fabrics together, making sure that the outer part of the floral fabrics are touching each other. So now we can finally start sewing. I just dropped the foot of my sewing machine down. I'm going to sew a little bit and I hit that button there at the top of my sewing machine to back stitch. And then I continued sewing forward. And back stitching is going to make sure that your stitches stay in place and they don't unravel. So every time I reach a corner, I have to lift up my foot of my sewing machine and turn my fabric, drop my foot of my sewing machine again, and then I can continue sewing down the edge of the pillow. And today I am sewing with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. That blue tape that you can see underneath my sewing machine there next to my hand is just a marker for me. It's on the 3/8 inch seam allowance line. And I just kept it there so that I wouldn't lose track of it because it is kind of hard to see, especially when you're concentrating on sewing. So I am using the tape as my line to try and not pass it and keep my pillow sewing straight. I am still pretty new to sewing, so I wanted to give myself a big seam allowance just in case my fabric ended up moving, which it kind of did. I didn't clip it the best. So I wanted to kind of take into account that I may not sew it as perfectly as I'd like. And that helped me a lot because it allowed me room for mistake if needed, which I did. I had a little bit of mistake with the fabric moving, but I'm big on planning ahead, so that worked out for me. And after I finish sewing all along the end, I want to show you that yes, these are all sewn, but at the top of the pillow, I did leave a little opening in the center, which we will use to turn the pillow inside out and stuff it. But first, I wanted to show you me sewing the pillow again. This is a better angle, I think, because it's straightforward. And this is actually my second pillow that I am sewing. And so I'm doing the exact same thing. If you didn't notice earlier, I started sewing in the center of this side because this is the side that I'm going to leave that opening to flip this fabric inside out and stuff the pillow. So I'm going to sew to the corner and then I'm going to stop sewing. I have to lift my needle a little here. And then I'm going to lift the foot and turn the fabric so that I can continue to sew downwards. And you can see I'm kind of adjusting my fabric to make it line up with my blue painter's tape that I have there before dropping my foot of my sewing machine and then continuing to sew down. And as I'm sewing downward, I just remove the clips as I get to them. And the clips are just helping me to keep the fabric in place. So I keep them on as long as I can. But when I'm reaching the needle, I have to remove them. And this is my first time making a pillow. So when I was originally starting it, I kind of just winged it. I just saw this vision in my head and was like, yeah, I think it'll work. And I've made a pillowcase before, so I figured it's the same thing. I just have to connect all four edges instead of just three. And so, because it was my first time, I had to give myself that big seam allowance. And I do have a lot of extra fabric on the ends, but it's okay because we literally are going to just cut it off and it's going to look perfect after. I'm finally on my last corner, so I have to lift my foot up one more time and drop it before sewing this last line. And we are going to leave a little bit of space open. So there I am back stitching where I had my clip, and then I'll show you the openings that I'm going to use to flip the fabric inside out or right side out and then stuff it. But before that, we have to cut all this extra fabric on the right side of our stitch. So I'm grabbing my fabric scissors and I'm going to trim as closely to the stitch as I can without cutting the stitch itself. We want to cut off as much of that excess fabric as we can, but we do not want to cut our stitch because that will ruin our whole binding. And once we cut off the ends, we can flip our fabric right side out. And after I finish cutting the ends off of my other pillow, I'll show you a little trick to get the corners out really good. But first, let's just take a moment of silence to just enjoy how satisfying it is to see all those rugged ends be cut off and be left with that smooth sewn edge. Okay, moment of silence over. So now we're going to take this second pillow fabric and we're going to turn it right side out through that hole that we left open. And then I'm going to grab the pencil here and I'm going to use the eraser side to push it into the corners until the corner is fully out, because you see it's kind of like bent inwards, but if you use the pencil and shove it out, it'll have more of a like defined corner. And then we're going to do that on all four corners of each of the pillow fabrics. And once we're all finished getting those corners pushed out, we can get ready to stuff the pillow. I got this polyfill fiber fill that you can use for stuffing dolls and toys and crafts, etc. And I am going to use this to stuff my pillow. I am stuffing the pillow to my liking. I have a big yacht, so I'm putting a lot in there. But literally, it doesn't matter. It's totally a preference thing. And once I stuffed it to my liking, I went ahead and pinned this. I slowed it down so I could show you. I pinned all along the corners after pinching them together so that I can sew this final piece together. And this did fit in my sewing machine. So I used my sewing machine rather than hand sewing it like a lot of people would recommend. But yeah, it fit in my sewing machine. So I said YOLO and I sewed it that way. And sewing something this thick underneath a sewing machine can be tricky, but I stuffed the stuffing as much as I could away from this line that I'm sewing so that it would be a little easier. And then when I finish sewing the line, I backstitch it before taking it out and cutting the excess string. And then I can remove the pins that I had in there. And when you put these pins a certain way, you can sew right over them, which is nice. That's what I did and sewed right over, and they continue to hold my fabric in place. And that's it. Now I have a super cute pillow to go with my outdoor chair. I think the fabric I chose goes so beautifully with the pink on our chair. This chair is actually upcycled, so I'll see if I can record how he did that when he does the second one, and then I'll share it with you guys, okay? Bye.